Thank you. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee for the members of this panel? Mr. McCarty.
Sure. I'll go back to the first panel, Mr. Murray. You mentioned two things which piqued my interest, and as you alluded to, this is an interest of mine. I'm authoring a bill on organics. Having worked a little bit with this at the local government, seeing here in Sacramento we have a really exciting food waste diversion project. It'd be nice to have those all across California. That kind of is a prelude to this. You mentioned some ideas in cap and trade, and we're debating that right now, how to allocate to our expenditure plan for this year. And so what specifically are you referencing as far as a recommendation or ideas as far as what we could do to invest cap and trade to further making some of this organic work more of a reality?
Sure. So let me just kind of, in terms of what John has been talking about here and what we've kind of discovered in this is that we are taking a huge portion. We're waiting for the final waste characterization numbers from CalRecycle, but upwards of 30 to 40% of the material that is left going to disposal in the state of California is an organic fraction. And a very high percentage of that, upwards of 25% of it, is readily divertible green waste and food waste. And when we're putting that material in landfill, it is maximizing its greenhouse gas emission potential. We are absolutely, it's like the absolute worst place to put it in terms of short-term emissions of greenhouse gases is in a landfill where in an oxygen-deprived environment we're getting methane is coming out of our landfills and going into the atmosphere. Not only can we cease that emission by diverting that organic fraction from landfill, but we can actually utilize it as the magic ingredient for turning our soil back into the carbon sinks that we need them to be in terms of balancing. So that's the objective. In terms of what we need to do in the state of California is quite quickly here make a substantial investment in the processing, the composting of that organic fraction. And the challenge in terms of, well, why doesn't the marketplace just take care of that right now, is because our disposal costs in California, in part because we've been so successful with recycling, we have a surplus of disposal capacity, and the tipping fee, the cost of dumping garbage in California, is extremely low. So the economy is not pointing in the direction of increased diversion of composting of that organic fraction on its own. So it needs a boost. We need to prime the pump. We need to make an investment in the processing and the composting of that organic fraction.
So what does that mean?
That literally means building state-of-the-art composting facilities. 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, the Water Board adopted new regulations in conjunction with the industry, but frankly it was challenging for the industry to swallow, new regulations that are going to add $450 million to the cost of implementing the composting infrastructure in California. So in order to build state-of-the-art composting that doesn't have unintended consequences in terms of environmental impacts, air quality and water quality impacts, we're going to have to spend a good deal of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, upwards of $1 billion on creating organics, food waste, green waste, processing, and composting and anaerobic digestion infrastructure in the state of California. Part of that means grants to programs to create model innovative programs, but ultimately it means creating an incentive, an ongoing incentive to offset the cost that a processor of that organic fraction would need to charge a generator, a local government, a waste hauler, to process that material, because it would be the cheapest option for that generator would be to throw it away. Now, thoughtful legislation like yours is going to require local governments to have achieve a capacity number. Diverting material, the generators were, with the legislation, the Chesbrough legislation, is going to require generators to divert that program, that material from landfill. But we still need to build that infrastructure. It's going to take, literally $1 billion to build that infrastructure over the next 10 years. And we think with a proposal that CalRecycle has put forward that Assemblymember Williams is authoring, that the way of achieving that would be a partnership between a tipping fee increase and cap and trade money. So those are the two items that are on the table in the next 3.5 weeks for the legislature to adopt.
Okay, and that's actually my second question here, the tipping fee issue. Can you remind me as far as the logistics, as far as what we're looking at?
Sure. We have an existing tipping fee surcharge in the state of California. It's been $1.40 a ton for 20 years. $1.40 a ton, that was solely to cover the cost of the regulatory infrastructure of solid waste management in the state of California. Now we've shrunk because we've reduced the amount of disposal. We've reduced the amount of money that $1.40 generates. So we need to increase that to cover the costs of CalRecycle, to make sure that we're all safe from the solid waste industry, the disposal of solid waste. But more importantly, we need to make this investment in the processing and the recovery of this organic fraction. So the idea is, in the Doss-Williams legislation, is in addition to making sure we're covering those regulatory costs, that we're able to generate funds to match the cap and trade funds to make an investment in organics recovery.
Gotcha.
And
so does the Williams bill actually increase the tipping fee? Has a number in there?
Yes. So
from what to
yesterday, the number was $4 per ton, to increase it to $4 a ton. I believe today it may be $3.50 per ton.
From 148.
From 140, yes.
Yeah.
So that's, I believe, and I hope I haven't just spilled beans that I wasn't supposed to spill, but
he's not here. That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we're all good.
But again, that's the range that we're talking about in the scheme of a state that has been throwing away 30 million tons of material annually. We're hoping to obviously get that number down to 20 million tons and lower in the next decade. And so, but that's what we're talking about. A family generates less than a ton. A household generates less than a ton of solid waste. So that's the order of magnitude that we're talking about for that tipping fee surcharge.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, questions for John. So, John, I attended. Mark Levine, Assemblymember Levine, had a bill to receive greenhouse gas reduction to do. I think it was a project in Marin, which I think it was your project. I actually went to the hearing, and so I'm interested in this. Organic material is generated in the urban areas, but is needed in the rural areas where you can actually put it on rangeland. And has there been any studies on the transportation and how much carbon is used to transport the amount? We're talking, millions of tons of organics. And we did a study. Placer County, which I represent, did a study on biomass, on wood chip waste, and we took into consideration the chipping operation, and we're trying to prove also that we would qualify for greenhouse gas funds. So has that all been taken into account for the process that you're talking about, so that we can actually verify that you're reducing carbon by this process?
Yeah, so fortunately, the caliber of the scientists that we're using or working with here is the highest. And so Dr. Marcia DeLonge conducted a peer-reviewed, published life cycle assessment for the entire compost process, plus the transportation, application, and the soil system response to it. And there was a cost of doing business, so there was an emission profile. But the benefit was so great compared to the fuel in all of those aspects of composting. It was very exciting. So that's a document that is on our website, the Marine Carbon Project website under research. That's the greenhouse gas accounting. Now the fuel, the actual cost of fuel is expensive. And we were able to go to full scale over a year ago, and we got thousands of yards of compost out on 3 large operations, Strauss Dairy, Stemple Creek. And the fuel hauling the material was expensive, but we haven't completed the complete financial analysis yet, but the increased forage production is exciting, the increased water holding capacity and the extended growing season is important. So these are all things that could be considered. It won't probably be realized economically in 1 year, but maybe over 3 years or 6 years or something like that in terms of the fuel cost. The greenhouse gas benefits, it's a slam dunk. It's very exciting.
So a follow-up question to that. So what about the water retention? So was there any, we see a lot in these projects where you're doing organics. or managing organics, the way I look at it, is that there's the greenhouse gas reduction fund, which is a fee that's attached to carbon, but there is no fee or ability for the water. So the retention of water and what you do for the watershed in your project, there's no ability, there's no revenue source there. But you are enhancing water quality and quantity of water in your process, correct?
Yeah, we increase infiltration, filtration, and detention, and we're slowing down the water cycle and using that water beneficially throughout that whole process. That same water, had it landed on dry dirt, it would have evaporated and been lost opportunity. We have installed in all our research plots water detectors or water instruments, so we know the actual amount of water held in the soil in a plant available form. That data that we generated was taken by the USGS hydrologists, Dr. Allen and Lori Flint, and they've constructed a poster for us showing the benefit of doing this kind of organic matter increase in soil statewide. And some of the numbers are scary big. 28 million acre-feet of water for the entire state if we were to increase the organic matter in soils in the rangeland systems. So, and I think your point was that the source of the organic materials isn't where we want to apply it. But that's the point of those maps that I shared with you. They do show you where the agricultural organic wastes are located. And the underserved communities, it's a great opportunity to combine several problem sets and come up with one solution that solves all of them.
With that, let me thank the panel for your presentation. Very interesting and insightful. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move now to public comment. I would remind the audience that the goal of the Select Committee is to help the legislature understand what must be done to meet the 75% reduction goal. We'll listen to as many people who want to get in line and speak into the microphone. I'm going to ask folks to keep oral comments to no more than a couple of minutes. We're not looking for long speeches. However, we are more than happy to take any kind of written comment of any length that folks would like to submit to the subcommittee. And so
Oh, you ready?
you may begin.
Okay, thanks. Mike Robeson on behalf of the Glass Packaging Institute. Really quickly, appreciate the Select Committee convening. I appreciate the members sitting through the hearing and caring about this issue. I really want to just quickly concur with some of the remarks that Mark Murray made concerning the bottle bill program and the glass container industry has historically supported expansion of the program to include all containers that are carrying beverages that are already in the program, basically leveling the playing field between container types. We think that's an appropriate expansion of the program, and really just want to limit my comments to that and hope to work with this committee and the policy committees in the future on any legislation that deals with the bottle program. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Gary Liss. I'm representing Zero Waste USA. I'm on the board of Zero Waste International Alliance, U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, and former mayor of Loomis, California. Zero Waste is doing reduce, reuse, recycle for real, focusing first on reducing and reusing, and then recycling and composting the rest. Getting into redesign, getting the maximum benefits of recycling and reducing and reusing to create the jobs that have been talked about here and reduce our greenhouse gases and reinvest resources back into the communities. Businesses are leading the way to zero waste. Businesses in California like Ricoh, Apple in Elk Grove, Vandenberg Air Force Base, Disneyland, Circle D Corral just got certified, Whole Foods, Sierra Nevada Brewing, Hilton in San Francisco. Again, thousands of businesses have already diverted over 90% of their waste from landfills and incineration in the environment. And those are now being certified by the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council. All the largest cities in California have now adopted zero waste goals, including Sacramento, San Diego most recently this year, San Francisco, an early leader, San Jose, Oakland, and many more. We believe that the state should adopt a zero waste goal. You're asking for new initiatives. That's a new initiative for the state. It has not been considered by the state here before. It would help the AB 341 75% goal rather than focusing on getting everyone kicking and screaming to the table to achieve 75%. If you also challenge everyone to go to zero waste, those who will respond to the challenge will help you meet that 75% goal quicker, easier, and with more benefits. We urge you to not only adopt the zero waste goal, but to challenge everyone, communities, businesses, colleges, venues, individuals, to adopt the zero waste goal and implement that. It's something that you could do by resolution of the legislature, not even requiring a bill, or you could drop language into one of the bills that are pending. We urge, if you do that, to adopt the ZWIA definition, the Zero Waste International Alliance definition, principles and standards, which basically say no burn, no bury, no toxics. We urge you to ask communities to adopt zero waste goals and plans to reinvest their resources locally and to support the zero waste infrastructure, recognizing that markets first is the axiom that we grew up on in recycling. The tipping fee surcharge that Mark talked about, cap and trade money, policies like AB 1826 are all things that can help with that zero waste infrastructure. There's a bill pending in Congress for investment in zero waste infrastructure by Congressman Ellison out of Minnesota. I urge you to take a look at that as a precedent for your consideration. Last, the Texas actually has a draft zero waste resolution I provided to your staff. And urge you to, again, do a resolution now or include language in a spot bill or a bill going through. Just say zero waste is the goal and help people challenge them to go there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Liston. We do have your document, so thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and fellow committee members. My name is Joe LaMariana. I'm the Solid Waste and Environmental Services Manager for the County of San Mateo. Had the privilege of working with the chair for many years on environmental issues locally. Definitely wanted to express our firm support in the legislative history that has led us to this set of discussions, AB 939, 32, 341, and 1826. They are the building blocks for where we're going in the future. We are also very supportive of future initiatives, including EPR, zero waste, healthy soils, etc. One of the challenges that's in front of us for being able to tackle this to the full extent is funding, and it keeps coming down to funding, doesn't it? And we are working very diligently, and we see one of the support mechanisms for that as AB 901, and we appreciate your continued support on that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Assemblymember Gordon and members of the committee, I'm Miriam Gordon. I'm the California Director of Clean Water Action. I want to thank you very much for opening up this dialogue and thinking about the future of solid waste. When it comes to zero waste, I always thought that what that meant was not having any waste that we need to manage. But that's not the same thing as diverting and recycling our solid waste. I think when it comes to non-recyclable and the non-recyclable and non-compostable portion of our solid waste stream, we need to focus on the top of that 3R hierarchy, the top two tiers, which are reduce and reuse. And what that means, in my mind, is waste prevention, not generating products, single-use products that need to be managed as waste. These two top tiers, source reduction or reduce and reuse, are not really addressed by our current solid waste paradigm of AB 939 and 341. Even as we achieve higher recycling rates, we're still increasing the quantity of waste that's being generated, and that has huge life cycle impacts on the environment. So what we need are greater efficiencies or policies that encourage the minimization of single-use products or encourage a transition to more durable products. Policies that measure our single-use products and packaging that are entering the marketplace and create some metrics to achieve reductions in the quantities that are entering the marketplace. We need policies that encourage manufacturers to rethink single-use disposable products. I would welcome a dialogue on this. We have a program at Clean Water called Rethink Disposable, and I'll submit written comments, but I would encourage a dialogue on waste prevention. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon, Assemblymember Gordon, Lucas, members of the committee. Thank you very much for having this meeting today. I'm Deborah Kaufman from Stop Waste, the Alameda County Waste Management Authority. We appreciate your leadership on all of these recycling and waste prevention issues and helping us move forward and the state move forward in achieving our waste reduction goals. I think there's never been a better time and there's never been a greater recognition of the value that increased recycling, composting, and waste prevention play in improving the state's environment and economy and in reducing greenhouse gases. We see ourselves in Alameda County as a leader on these issues, and we want to continue partnering with the state and CalRecycle as we get close to achieving our 75% goal. To make AB 341 and 1826 work well, we also encourage the prioritization of organics and recycling infrastructure, as well as financial and regulatory assistance, and also expanding the beverage container legislation. We encourage the state to continue down the EPR pathway, which has worked very well for local governments with products such as paint, which have been so expensive for local governments to deal with. So encourage going down that pathway for products such as batteries. I want to thank you for your support and CalRecycle's support for helping local governments and the state obtain disposal information that will help us fund and improve local recycling programs. I think, as you've heard today, getting accurate information is really critical to improving, designing, and funding our local programs. So we appreciate that, and we look forward to continue to being a resource on these issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you.